At first, it was nothing more than whispers inside the fandom. A few moments here, a glance there, easily dismissed, easily mocked. Whenever fans tried to connect the dots, the reaction was always the same. You're reaching. It's just fan service. They're close because they're in the same group. The Taekook rumor became a joke for many, something people loved to ridicule rather than understand. But what most people didn't realize was this: rumors don't survive this long without a reason. As years passed, the moments didn't stop. They became quieter, but also more meaningful, unscripted reactions. Comfort that felt instinctive, not staged. Moments that happened when no one was supposed to notice. Fans began pointing out patterns, not just isolated clips, but behavior that repeated itself. Across time, locations, and situations, still the same excuses were used. But deep down, even the skeptics started to feel it. Some things are hard to explain away forever. Then something shifted. The interactions became more restrained, the distance more noticeable. And that's when fans started asking a different question. Why change something that was never real in the first place? Sometimes, silence says more than closeness ever could. And sometimes, pulling back isn't proof of nothing, it's proof of everything. Just when many thought the story was over, one moment brought it all back. A timing coincidence too perfect. A reaction too raw. A decision that didn't make sense. Unless you knew the history. Army didn't scream this time. They didn't rush to conclusions. They watched, they compared. And slowly they realized this wasn't imagination. This was consistency. This isn't about being right. It's about the years of being told to stop seeing what was right in front of them. It's about fans who noticed the quiet moments, the ones without cameras, scripts, or explanations. For many armies, this story isn't shocking anymore. It's emotional. Because sometimes the truth doesn't explode. It waits patiently until people are finally ready to accept it. The Taekook rumor didn't suddenly become real. It simply reached a point where it could no longer be ignored. What was once mocked is now questioned. What was once denied is now discussed. And whether people accept it or not, one thing is clear. This story was never about a rumor. It was about what people chose not to see. When emotions fade, details remain. Fans began revisiting old moments, not with excitement but with calm clarity. The same patterns appeared again and again, years apart, in different situations, similar reactions. Unspoken understanding, choices that mirrored each other too closely to be coincidence. These weren't dramatic moments meant for attention. They were small, quiet, almost accidental, and that's exactly why they mattered, because acting is loud, but truth is subtle. Fan service follows a script. It appears when cameras are ready, and disappears when they're not. But what fans noticed here didn't follow that rule. The moments happened off guard, during serious situations when emotions were high, not playful. That if it was just fan service, it would have been consistent and public. Instead, it became cautious, controlled, almost protected, and that raised the question many were afraid to ask. Why protect something that doesn't exist? There were no confirmations. No denials, no explanations, just silence. But silence over time began to feel intentional. Certain topics were avoided, certain moments were never addressed, certain questions were answered without words. For Army, this silence wasn't emptiness. It was a boundary. And boundaries are rarely built around nothing. Something changed inside the fandom. Instead of defending, fans started documenting. Instead of reacting, they started analyzing. No exaggeration. No wild theories. Just timelines, behavior, and consistency. That's when the conversation shifted. Not from "is it real?" but from "why were we told not to see it?" This story was never meant to convince skeptics. It was never about forcing a narrative. It was about acknowledging what many quietly noticed and chose to keep to themselves for years. Some truths don't need validation. They only need time, and time, slowly but surely, did its work. Even now, this story continues to resurface. Not because fans want drama, but because unresolved emotions don't disappear. They linger. They echo. They resurface when the timing feels right. And that's why this Taekook story hasn't faded, because it wasn't built on noise. It was built on moments that refused to be forgotten. Time has a way of revealing what words never could. Years passed, schedules changed, stages grew bigger. Yet certain connections never truly faded. Fans noticed how the energy remained familiar, even when circumstances forced distance. Not louder, not obvious, just steady, and that consistency over time began to feel heavier than any single moment. Because coincidence fades but patterns endure for many fans. This was never entertainment. It was about recognizing emotions that felt real, moments that reflected comfort, trust, and understanding. Army didn't feel shocked anymore. They felt protective. Because when you've watched something grow quietly over years, you don't need proof, you need respect. And that's why this story stayed alive. Even in silence, there's a truth many fans understand now more than ever. Some stories aren't meant to be confirmed publicly. Some emotions aren't meant to be explained, and forcing clarity can sometimes do more harm than good. This isn't about labels or definitions, it's about acknowledging humanity behind the spotlight. Because idols don't stop being human just because their lives are watched. While debates raged online, something important was overlooked. The story didn't grow louder, it grew quieter, and quiet stories often carry the most meaning. While people argued over what it was, others noticed how it felt. And feelings, unlike rumors, don't need agreement. Eventually, many armies stopped trying to explain. They stopped correcting comments, stopped fighting narratives, stopped chasing validation. Instead, they chose peace. Because understanding doesn't always need to be shared, sometimes, it's simply held. And that quiet acceptance changed everything. There was no dramatic reveal, no headline confirmation, no final answer. And maybe that was the point. Some stories aren't meant to end with noise, they're meant to remain gentle. Not forgotten. Not erased. Just respected. When you remove speculation, arguments, and noise, what remains is simple moments, time, emotion. And for many armies, that is enough, because the most meaningful truths didn't need to be announced. The Taekook rumor didn't become real because someone said it did. It became real because it endured, through doubt, through silence, through time. And in the end, reality wasn't something revealed. It was something recognized. Not by everyone, but by those who were paying attention. Distance doesn't always mean separation. Sometimes it means protection. Fans noticed how moments became rarer. But when they happened, they felt heavier. No unnecessary gestures, no exaggerated reactions, just presence, and strangely, that restraint felt more intimate than anything before. Because when something matters, you don't show it to everyone. What stood out the most wasn't what was said, but what was never explained. No clarifications, no forced narratives, no corrections. They simply moved forward. And that calm confidence made fans pause. People only over-explain what they're unsure of. But this felt settled. Instead of waiting for new moments, Army began revisiting old ones. Not with excitement, but with understanding. Scenes that once felt confusing now made quiet sense. It wasn't about discovering something new. It was about finally understanding something old. Even in silence, one thing remained consistent: comfort and stressful moments and emotional situations in times when words felt unnecessary. That kind of comfort can't be scripted. It's learned. It's built. And it doesn't disappear just because it's no longer visible. There's a strange peace surrounding this story now. Not because it was confirmed, not because it was denied, but because it no longer needs either. Fans stopped waiting for answers and started respecting boundaries. And somehow that acceptance felt like closure. There was an unspoken understanding within the fandom. Some things are seen. Some things are felt. And some things are simply left alone. Not out of fear, but out of respect. And that silent agreement changed the tone of everything. What remains isn't controversy, it's patience, empathy, maturity, a reminder that not every truth needs to be loud to be meaningful. And not every story needs an ending to feel complete. The Taekook rumor didn't become real on camera. It became real in understanding and patterns that lasted, and emotions that stayed consistent, and silence that felt intentional. And maybe that's the most real kind of truth there is. The kind you don't prove, the kind you recognize.